Hey everyone, so I wanted to talk about the ancient weapons from an angle that I think most people haven't considered, because I am 95% certain that there is one simple connection I could make here that explains the true nature of all three ancient weapons. So of course right now we know what Pluton and Poseidon are, but the missing piece is still Uranus. We don't know what it is, where it is, or what it can do. And so far most theories have been just based around its name, Uranus, god of the sky, as that has seemed to be consistent with the naming of the other two ancient weapons. Pluton takes after Pluto, the god of death, and has the ability to cause mass destruction. Poseidon takes after the god of the sea, and has the ability to control the sea kings. Now with this video, I want to tie together what we know of the other ancient weapons with what the name Uranus entails, as well as with a lot of the overarching ideas of the story. And I want to start with a simple hypothesis of what the ancient weapons could reflect. So first of all, Oda likes doing things in threes. So think about the special supernatural powers of the world. There are 3 types of devil fruits, there are 3 types of Haki, and there are 3 ancient weapons. Now, while I can't see a parallel between the 3 types of devil fruits and the 3 types of Haki, interestingly, if we take what we know of the ancient weapons so far, they do seem like they could mirror the 3 types of Haki. So just to start with, let's take that as a basic hypothesis that the 3 types of Haki reflect the nature of the 3 ancient weapons. So first, Pluton. This is the ancient weapon that seems to be most clearly about physical, offensive force. To me, intuitively, this seems like the ancient weapon that most fittingly represents armament Haki. And the more we learn of armament Haki, the more accurate I think that this parallel could be. To be clear, I'm not saying Pluton is powered by Haki, I'm simply saying that the nature of this weapon seems to reflect the nature of a certain type of Haki. And so along those lines, fitting nicely in my opinion, is Poseidon. This ancient weapon seems to me to be a perfect representation of the nature of Conqueror's Haki. It's the power to command the Sea Kings. When we first learned about this ability, it was implied that it was the ability to simply communicate with them. But when the Sea Kings actually explained to Shirahoshi what the ability is, we realize it is something even greater. The Sea Kings are her subordinates and she is their king. Their power is her wish is their command. Basically, the will of the king has the ability to control the ocean, and even more interesting if you think about it is just the name Sea Kings. The kings of the sea who can be commanded by a king. That ancient weapon does seem to be a direct parallel to the nature of Conqueror's Haki. And interestingly enough, the first ever use of Conqueror's Haki in the entire story was on a Sea King. So if I'm correct about this, that itself would have been some insane level of foreshadowing by Oda. So with that in mind, let's talk about Uranus, with the going hypothesis that its nature may be somewhat similar to observation Haki. So first off, going back to its name, the Greek god Uranus was the personification of the sky, and more specifically, the heavens. He was also the original ruler of the universe. Now in One Piece, the celestial dragons are repeatedly characterized as being the gods of the world. They consider themselves to be divine beings, above mortal humans. They rule the world from far above, from a kingdom literally above the clouds, Marijoa, which essentially represents heaven itself. It's called the Holy Land, and the area the celestial dragons live in is literally called the Land of the Gods. Oda has been hammering this idea in a million different ways throughout the series, and going along with this, the will of D that has been built up for so long seems to be specifically tied to the fall of the gods, or more specifically, the fall of the celestial dragons. So, we have that concept. The celestial dragons are the gods of the world who rule from the heavens. Now, if we backtrack for a bit to Skypiea, this was the arc that we were first introduced to the concept of a god up in the heavens who ruled with absolute power as well. Now, I believe Oda did a lot with Enel to foreshadow the future ideas of God in the story. First and foremost, Oda designed Enel such that Luffy was literally his natural enemy. This was of course direct foreshadowing for the concept later down the line that symbolically, the D's are the natural enemies of the gods, and of course Luffy seems to be the ultimate inheritor of the will of D, who will one day be the force to bring down the reign of the gods. But now, while everyone remembers Enel's lightning ability and the fact that this made Luffy his natural enemy, I think what's equally important was Enel's other terrifying ability, his amplified observation haki. Thanks to his thunder amplification, Enel had such powerful observation haki that he was able to listen to literally everyone across all of Skypiea. Any signs of rebellion in his realm could be instantly sensed out and destroyed. And so if Enel's lightning ability foreshadowed the notion that Luffy is God's natural enemy, then to me his extraordinary omniscient level of observation haki may foreshadow the notion that God is all-knowing. So, taking all that into account, let's tie that back into the concept of the celestial dragons, the gods of the world who rule from the heavens of Marijoa, the fact that the name Uranus means the ruler of the universe and the personification of the heavens, and my initial hypothesis that the ancient weapons parallel the three types of haki, with Uranus reflecting observation haki. So, longtime viewers might remember this theory of mine about the Straw Hat, but now I think I have a lot more evidence for its validity. When the Straw Hat was first revealed, it seemed implied to be the sacred treasure of Marijoa. However, as I see it, there are only three possibilities for why the Straw Hat would be extremely important, enough so to be called a treasure. First would be if it's an important symbol of the ancient kingdom. However, being a symbol doesn't seem to be that significant on its own. It doesn't sound like a power that would allow one to rule the world, as Doflamingo implies. Even if it is proof that the ancient kingdom once existed, poneglyphs are the same thing as proof that the ancient kingdom once existed, so it's nothing new. Now, second option, let's say it grants great power if worn. In this option, maybe it is Uranus, who knows, but functionally speaking, the hat is abnormally large. Short of Kaido or Big Mom, there are no characters we could imagine actually wearing this straw hat. Im certainly couldn't do it. So, final option, what if the straw hat isn't normally a straw hat? If we take everything I talked about regarding Uranus before, the potential parallels to observation haki, the concept of an all-knowing god, what if the straw hat is Uranus, an ancient weapon that changes shape to show what will be the greatest threat to its user? This would explain a lot of Im's actions. He strangely seemed to be choosing between Luffy, Blackbeard, Shirahoshi, and Vivi, which would make sense if these were all individuals that Uranus had been showing him recently. Naturally, all four of these characters have the potential to be pivotal figures for the world's future. The rising Pirate King candidates, Luffy and Blackbeard, the ancient weapon Poseidon, and the next-in-line ruler of a country that houses the secret to the ancient weapon, Pluton. Oda likely misled us by simply showing the Straw Hat with no context, when in reality this was one of the four forms that Uranus had been regularly cycling through, and ultimately of the four, Im chose Vivi. And what's especially interesting is that from what the Gorosei say to Im, it sounds as though it's a regular ritual for Im to select a light to erase from history. That alone implies to me that Im may possess some sort of power of insight, an ability that allows him to foresee who needs to be extinguished from the world at certain intervals. Lastly, this ties in really well with a concept that Oda has been building in more and more into the story. The power to see the future and the power to change it, which in itself is the basis of advanced observation haki. The true power of observation is being able to see a potentially bad future, giving one the ability to prevent it. So finally, putting it all together, Uranus is the Greek god who was the personification of the heavens and the ruler of the universe. As such, the ancient weapon Uranus in One Piece is held by the gods of the world up in the heavens, fittingly in the hands of the literal ruler of the world, and reflecting the nature of observation haki, it's a power that gives him insight into potential futures that must be cut off before turning into reality. And finally, reflecting the ability of the original god that we were introduced to, it fits the idea of an all-knowing god that can detect and eliminate all potential sparks of rebellion. And lastly, it fits Doflamingo's claim that it would give one the power to rule the world, as the power of foresight is a godlike ability that tells you who to eliminate in order to maintain control. So, let's look back again at my initial hypothesis, the connection that I said could solve the mystery of the ancient weapons. The idea that the ancient weapons parallel the three types of haki. First, Pluton invokes the god of death and is a weapon of offensive force similar to armament haki. Second, Poseidon invokes the god of the sea and is a weapon of will, specifically the will of a king to command the obedience of the Sea Kings, similar to Conqueror's Haki. Finally, Uranus invokes the god of the heavens and the ruler of the universe, is a weapon used by the gods to foresee all threats to them, similar to Observation Haki. So that's all for this video. If you enjoyed, then definitely like, share, and subscribe, and you can join my Patreon for chapter reviews and extended thoughts podcast. Talk to y'all later.